Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship podcast interview. Very excited to be joined here. Of course, I'm Chip Brown of horns247.com. Very excited to be joined this week by Zach Barnett. Now, Zach Barnett, national columnist, footballscoop.com. For all you college football junkies, and they have high school scoop too. Footballscoop.com is a go-to for the junkies like myself. But I remember you, Zach, when you were a student at Texas. I don't know where the time goes because you've been at Football Scoop since 2012. How are you doing? Happy New Year.
Thank you for having me. Doing well. Yeah, it's been a long time. It was 15 years ago now that I started there as a student. I majored in history, but I basically majored in football during my time there. I spent all my free time and some of my non-free time, at the SID offenses, just trying to soak up as much as I could. Working under the great John Bianco, Jeremy Sharp, Thomas Stepp, those guys. And then did that for 3 years. My famous story is I had $900 to my name and spent 600 of it going to the national championship game against Alabama. And we all know how that turned out. And then from there, I just knew I wanted to work in college football. So I got a job at North Texas. I interned at the National Football Foundation, which is based out of Irving, for one of the summers in college, and got a job there shortly after college, and did that for 2 years, just kind of trying to build up their website, their web presence, helping run their programs, and then kind of hit my head on the ceiling there for 2 years, and then just applied to Football Scoop. I saw, like, on Monday they had posted that they were looking to hire someone. I didn't send an email until Wednesday, but I got a response quickly, and then basically had the job, that night. And that was October 2012, and now here we are, basically January 2022, and I'm still here. I mean, it's been almost 10 years now. It's hard to believe.
Well, let's talk about that. And of course, your dad, Dave Barnett, voice of everything in the Metroplex, the Rangers. I mean, he's Emmy Award winning sports broadcaster. I'm sure that had a little to do with your love of sports. But so at Football Scoop, I love this because you went from the SID side kind of back to the reporter writer side.
Yeah, not a lot of people do that, but that was my path.
So what was it about it that you just said, I want to be in it?
Really, it was a motivation to get out of the situation that I was in at that time. And I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. I believe God guides our steps, and I believe He opened that door for me. And I thought I could be good at the job, and I certainly did have to operate different sides of your mind, but I thought it'd be something fun, something I could be good at. And almost 10 years now, hopefully I'm getting to be where I'm okay at it. Certainly a lot of room to grow, but yeah, I just I try to nerd out as much as I can about college football and just what, I love the sport so much. I think it's the most American endeavor that we have in this country. Like, I think if you were to take someone who knew nothing about America and explain it to them in 3 hours, you just take them to any college football game and they begin to understand it. So I try to just explore the sport from every angle and do my best to deliver stories for our readers, and our site's obviously different in that it was founded by a coach. Our coaches are our main audience. Obviously, we go deeper into hirings and firings than anybody else. So anything that we think would be interesting to coaches primarily is what we're after.
Yeah, I think that's important too for our listeners here on the Flagship podcast who may already be fans of footballscoop.com or are just hearing about it now. Talk about how it started and the relationship with coaches in terms of how your news is gathered.
Yeah, it's kind of a ultimately, American internet story. It was started in 1999 by a GA at TCU. Keith Allen was his name. He was, calling around. Every GA wants to being a GA, as we all know, is miserable work. and trying to get a full-time job. And so he was calling around. And he was like, you know what? If I'm doing this, I bet everyone else in my spot is doing this as well. I should start a website. That was the Wild West times of the internet. And so he started it in 1999 and ran it by himself for 8 years, and would coach during the day and then come home and post the scoop at night. And I mean, the site was a definitely an overnight sensation among that core group. And still to this day, GAs are our core readers for the most part. But he eventually landed a head coaching job and was just like, I can't do this. I can't be a head coach and run this website. So there's a guy, Pete Roussel, who was in coaching, and knew that it had gone up for sale. Talked to his brother Scott, and Scott was working for Arthur Anderson, buying and selling companies. It was like, you know what, you should buy this site, and we could run it together. So that's what Scott bought the site. Scott and Pete ran it for 5 years or so. They had a falling out, and Scott hired Doug, I think like 6 months or so before me, and then I came along in 2012. And it's been the three of us for about 8 years. And we hired John Bryce. You surely know him, Chip. Covered Tennessee very well. He works with us now, so it's the four of us. It's funny. I get a lot of questions from coaches, wanting to know the origin story, and they're like, "Do y'all have offices?" Like, no, it's just the four of us, and we communicate over Slack, and that's the magic of it.
Hey, it's fantastic. I mean, y'all are comprehensive. It's impressive that you all get as much done, and it makes me realize that every minute I'm taking from you, you're probably you could be writing some scoop. But let's get into. I mean, you got a store. Texas has certainly kept you busy, Zach. Steve Sarkisian, the fourth coach at Texas in 9 years. Really, you left at the right time, because it's been a desert really since you left in 2010. But Steve Sarkisian, Texas football. Give me your take on where Texas football is in this crazy 2021 season. I know we're in 2022 now, but looking back at 2021, where Texas is 4-1, they're up 28-7 on OU in the first quarter, 38-20 at halftime. Heck, 41-23 in the third quarter, and lose, and then go on the longest losing streak since 1956.
Yeah, I mean, what really Texas, and probably only Tennessee is another program that could have the type of season that Texas had. And it's funny, when I first started this job, I was like, what's it going to be like to cover a Texas search? Because I mean, at that time in 2012, it hadn't happened in a long time, and little did I know what a veteran I'd be by 2021. But
you were just getting those muscles loosened up,
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to have a hard line take about where Texas is in their 2021 season, because the results we saw are so, I mean, the delta of the performance of that football team was just all over the place. I mean, do you want to believe that they're the team that lost to Kansas? I mean, be so bad that they could lose to Kansas at home. And, as your listeners know, we're really never really the better team in that game. They were behind early, trailing throughout. I mean, Kansas won that game, and it wasn't a fluke. Like, they were the better team that day. But then at the same time, as you mentioned, they had 10-plus point second half leads on Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Baylor in successive games. Like, all three top 10 teams. Who else is good enough? No one else in the big, no, even those three teams, never had such advantages over each other that Texas did. Obviously, they weren't able to hold on to them, but it's what is the real version? I think the real version is closer to the team that had those leads than the team that lost to Kansas. And I think the moves we've seen since then, with recruiting, with hirings that Sark's made, I think we're going to see them improve and continue to improve. I think the team is better than its 5-7 record is, but we all know what Bill Parcells says about what your record means.
That's right. You are what your record says you are. All right, we'll take a quick break with Zach Barnett, national columnist for footballscoop.com, right here on the Flagship podcast. And if you're watching us on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel, we'll roll on. So, Zach, now we've got Stan Drayton is now the head coach at Temple. Brendan Marion's coming in as the receivers coach, replacing Andre Coleman. Casey Thompson's in the transfer portal, but Texas lands this incredible recruiting class full of offensive and defensive linemen in Quinn Ewers. And I'm sure you followed Quinn Ewers. You're right outside of Dallas in Aledo, and Quinn Ewers played at South Lake Carroll. Give me your thoughts on the rebuild now and where Texas goes from here.
I mean, it's certainly. I never imagined, when the Kansas game went final, that the program could be at this position. The recruiting class that they had far outseeded, my expectations for what a 5-7 team could do. And then to add Quinn Ewers, really, it worked out better having him the way that he arrived in Austin than if he had signed out of high school. Obviously, you lose a year of his eligibility, but he's already used his one waiver. So he's really locked in for at least the next 2 years to the program. And he has another year of separation from Arch Manning. So who knows if they eventually get him or not, but it certainly helps that they're 2 years separated now. And, the offensive line class that they signed is the best in the country. Obviously, they loaded up on the defensive front as well. Like, I think it's very clearly that Sark got together with Kyle Flood and Pete Kukowski. It was like I don't think they even need to sit down and speak to each other in their first meeting. Like, we got to beef this program up on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And so I guess the downside of that is you can't necessarily expect those guys to become all conference players in 2022 as true freshmen, but
although Texas fans will hope.
Yeah, and they obviously need help, certainly on the defensive front immediately. So I think you're going to see them continue to try and tinker and improve there. But the outlook for where this thing can be in 2024, if they can just put the results together on the field, I think the outlook is higher than it's been in a long, long time.
Yeah, and with the incredible year that Xavier Worthy had as a true freshman, Steve Sarkisian sure seems to know what he's looking for in terms of skill talent offensively. Probably the biggest reason why Andre Coleman is no longer with the program. I think there were some differences in recruiting with him and Sark. Andre Coleman looking for more of the blue-collar, chip-on-the-shoulder guy. Sark looking for more of the Ferraris out there. So in comes Brennan Marion. But, this is a fascinating time, obviously, because Texas has already said they're going to the Southeastern Conference. Probably going to happen 23 earliest, 24 latest. Give me your thoughts on that move for Texas.
When I first saw the report, I was like, it was so mind-blowing, the Houston Chronicle report. I was like, okay, this is someone from the A&M side just trying to embarrass those schools. And then, of course, that broke during SEC media days. And, reporters from Texas, Oklahoma reached out. And the response from both sides was all like, rumors, we can't respond to every rumor. And I was, you and I both know, like, this is happening. Like, if it wasn't happening, they were going to say, like, this is happening. And, I have to say I'm really excited. Like the idea of playing A&M regularly, maybe every year, playing Arkansas regularly. That really that gets me more excited than playing Alabama, playing Georgia, playing Florida. I'm sure that will come in time. I don't know when it's not going to be weird that Texas is in the same conference as Florida. That's going to take a long time to get used to. But the idea of playing A&M and Arkansas again every single year or every other year gets the juices flowing. And it's, if it wasn't already, it's certainly pedal to the metal time. Like, you can't put out the product that they did in 2014, 2017, 2021 and think you're going to survive in the SEC. Like, it is absolutely like all systems go, pedal to the metal, and obviously the leadership was making moves ahead of time with bringing in Sark, the experience that he has, and then the recruiting, the NIL aspect to it. Like I think the program, I think it's closer to competing within the SEC than the average person probably assumes. But if they go in there and they suck from day one, like my God, the Schadenfreude is going to be able, you're going to be able to see it from space if they can't compete immediately.
Yeah, yeah, no, there's no question. I mean, Texas, one of the reasons I've loved covering Texas since 92 is they are the Yankees of college football, the Lakers of, you either love them or you hate them. But you're going to pay attention to Texas because the history, the brand, the boosters, um, but it's unbelievable. I mean, it's a never-ending story, and the twists and turns. It's you never know. You never know what's coming. So, okay, so we look at the landscape and Texas and Oklahoma, and of course, Lincoln Riley wanted no part of that, so he goes to USC. In comes Brent Venables, but as you look at the Big 12 now, adding Cincinnati, Houston, BYU, um, what when you look at the Big 12, what are your thoughts on the Big 12? And certainly Texas will be in it next year.
I mean, I think it's going to be a really fun conference to follow moving forward. Obviously, Oklahoma has dominated the past decade up and through this season, but you remove Oklahoma, you remove the potential of what Texas could be, and you see that this is going to be a wide open conference. Like, I don't see any program that's going to lord over the rest of the league, and I think for your entertainment value, I think it's going to be probably the most fun conference to follow year in, year out. And I certainly hope that the 12-team playoff comes to fruition. I think we all expect that it will. It'll be fun to see these teams. Whoever goes out and wins the conference compete against the best in the country, because I don't see the coming Big 12 really factoring into the 4-team format, but I think whoever wins the Big 12 is going to be a really good football team year in, year out. And, you look at the programs that aren't pulling their weight right now. I mean, Texas Tech won a bowl game, and they're going to get better. TCU is obviously retrenching, but Kansas is getting better. No one knows that better than Texas. Really, outside of UT, the only program that you would say is not operating at somewhat peak efficiency is West Virginia. And so I don't know many other conferences that you can say that about. So I think it's going to be, maybe the most competitive conference week to week, year to year of any sport in major college football.
Yeah, and if you're Mike Gundy, you're wondering, when am I ever going to win this conference again? Because it sure seemed like it was set up for him this year, and they lose that game in absolutely heartbreaking fashion.
Oh my! I was listening back to the radio call of the final play, and it was the Oklahoma State radio. It was dead silent for a minute on radio after Jaylen Warren. I think it was Jaylen Warren. No, it wasn't Jaylen Warren, but the Oklahoma State running back that was 5 inches short of the goal line. Like, everything you had at that time, they thought, we win this game, we're going to jump or we're going to be in the playoff. Everything you thought you had, just beat Oklahoma. You were 5 inches, 3 inches short of it. And certainly still a great season, but it's a special kind of heartbreak, isn't it? To see most of your dreams come true, but not all of them. Like, to beat Oklahoma, to have the season they had, but not reach all the way to the mountaintop. And even if they hadn't, reached the playoff, that was kind of out of their hands. But to win the Big 12, win Bedlam, go to the Sugar Bowl, maybe win that's really the best season you can possibly have. And to get so close, but still not get all the way, is its own kind of misery. And, Mike Gundy, he's I don't expect him to pull his luscious locks of hair out over this. He doesn't get as up and down as the rest of us do, but it's got to be so, it's heartbreaking in a way to lose that game the way that they did.
What, Zach, what excites you most about Texas, and what concerns you most about Texas going into 2022?
What excites me most is Quinn Ewers. I mean, to think that there's been one quarterback with a perfect 24/7 rating since Vince Young, and he also plays for Texas, is I still haven't, wrapped my mind around. Like, it still hits me like Quinn Ewers signed with Texas. Like, they pulled that off, given that they went 5-7. So, there's no throw that this kid can't make. So I'm excited to see if he can live up to the hype, and what sort of tools Sark can put around him, and what they can do with him. To use your analogy, to see where Sark can take this Ferrari of an offense. But then the defense, like, there were times I watched the defense this season thinking, I don't even know what they're trying to accomplish from play to play. The scheme wasn't great. There was a lot of just assignment busts. They couldn't hold an edge to save their life. So, I was kind of wondering at the time, like, okay, Sark's hired most of his assistants. He hired Bo Davis, Terry Joseph, Blake Gideon before he hired his coordinator. And then, none of these guys had ever worked before. It was just obviously the results spoke for themselves in terms of how the staff was put together. So as we're sitting here now, all those guys are set to return. And, personally, I expect them all to return for the most part. Like, I can't imagine that you go get a Terrence Brooks and Ryan Watts and then go get rid of Terry Joseph right after that. So does another year allow them to put together a product, a scheme that works for everyone? I don't know. That's a massive question mark. And then at the same time, if you're Sark, it's like all your players have known is new coaches year after year after year. And at some point, attrition for the sake of attrition, just it doesn't work. Like, you got to keep it going. You got to build at some point. So, that right there is his biggest decision moving forward of what to do about this defense, because it's hard to get too excited without seeing them actually stop somebody in the game that matters.
Yeah, no, it's true. And it just seemed like that front and back of the defense were not tied together, especially at critical times, but a lot of the times, and then there were games like Iowa State where they were, and you're looking at it and going, how do you give up 57 to Kansas and play, like you did for 2.5 quarters against Iowa State? Texas led the Iowa State game at halftime, by the way.
Yeah, it was 7-3.
Yeah, 7-3.
Yeah, the phrase, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, whoever invented that phrase was imagining the 2021 Texas defense.
Crazy. All right, so I have to say, this is a great system that you have at Football Scoop. If the GAs are the primary, that backbone of the site, and then they grow up to become assistant coaches and head coaches, it's a pretty good network to have, Zach.
Yeah, GAs and wives are our biggest our biggest demographics for sure.
Yeah, that's a good network to have. I'll say that. What as you look at college football, it's an unbelievable year with NIL and all the stuff that brings. A lot of people saying, oh, that just turns under the table money in recruiting to over the table money in recruiting. Either way, how do you see it going?
I think the transfer portal and NIL, I think it's going to be messy getting there, but I think both of those things will end up being positives for college football. I think both of those things will help if you look at it as an entertainment product. I think both of those things will help put the best players on the field more often than not, and certainly more than what we're seeing before. Like, is it the 1950s platonic ideal of a guy signs with the school out of high school and plays for the love of the game and to get his books paid for? No, it's not, but it hasn't been that for a long, long time.
Thank you.
So I think, upwardly mobile guys, we've seen so many of them shine at a lower level and then move up to the Power 5. And then at the same time, guys that weren't getting on the field at an LSU, at Alabama, that can move down a level and get on the field and star. It's a chance to both ways for players to get out there and prove themselves to the NFL. I think there's certainly going to be, certain examples like, Houston Baptist. They have a great offense with Caden Stearns brothers, Bailey Zappi, and then they all up and go to Western Kentucky. Obviously, that's devastating if you're Houston Baptist. But if you look at it as a whole, I think it's going to be a good thing for college football. And then I think NIL, like, no one in American society can't make money off of their labor other than college athletes. So moving forward, I think that's off the table. I think it'll help, borderline guys stay in college. Like if you are looking at leaving and maybe you're a fifth round guy, but you can stay for another $100,000 and maybe work your way to a third round guy as a senior. Maybe you get a degree. Maybe you hone your craft. You become better at a football player. Like I think in the long run, this will help players. The best players play, maybe not at the school they signed out of high school, but they'll be on the field. And I think it'll help players stick around college longer. And isn't that something we all want?
Yeah. Yeah. What, let's first of all, how's your dad doing, Dave Barnett?
He's doing great. He calls North Texas football and men's basketball games, and then also is the voice of the Frisco Fighters indoor team. So just saw him at Christmas, and then I'll see him again here in a couple weeks at a Mean Green game.
Love your dad. And give me like a memory or two from your time at Texas. Like when you think back on it and where you are now, what stands out?
Oh man. I remember the excitement of going to the open practices. I remember having a feeling before the 2008 season. 2007 was kind of disappointing. The 2008 season, I remember thinking, I don't know a lot, but I think this team is going to be pretty good. And then obviously it turned out to national title caliber team. We all know how it ended, but that was probably my most fun I've ever had following a team in any sport. I guess embarrassing memory. One time I was interviewing Colt McCoy for a story, and we had those tape, the actual tape recorders, and I hit the wrong button, and he's standing there. He's 2 minutes into an answer, and then I start hearing another interview playing. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't record any of that. And so, I had to roll back and like, sorry, can you say that everything you just said all over again? So, of course, Colt's a pro. He did that, but one of those moments where we've all been there. And just being able to be that close to the program and mainline, how college football works was an experience of a lifetime for sure.
Of your coaching searches, what's been the craziest coaching search that you've experienced?
That's a good question. Man, it feels like that should be the type of thing that I have right off the top of my head. But it's hard to think of immediately one that stands out. I mean, I will say the Lincoln Riley saga that just happened of him head faking toward LSU so long, and the rumors there, and then him up and going to USC 8 hours later, or whatever it was. Like that's one that I'll remember. We'll all remember 20 years from now. That's one of the ones that we'll point back to many moons from now.
Yeah, especially him saying, "I'm not going to be the next coach at LSU."
Yes.
No one thought to ask, "Are you going to be the coach at Oklahoma next year?"
Yeah, a brilliant move by him.
A brilliant move by the mule shoe magician. All right, so let's do a little predicting. When will Texas be relevant in a conference race again? When will they be competing possibly in a conference title game again?
Man, I mean, I've been asked that question and predicted this so many times that you feel like Charlie Brown with the football at some point. But I look at where the Big 12 is. I look at the overall talent on the roster and the coaching staff, and I'm like, why can't it be 2022? There's no good reason why it can't be 2022. And I know for a fact I said that in 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. Probably years before that. But the reason I keep coming back to this is there's no reason other than this tripping on their own shoelaces why this can't happen. So I'll say 2022, given the great unknown of what lies beyond in 2023. We don't even know what league they'll be in. I'm going to say 2022 is the year that it happens.
I love it. I think that's an ender right there. Zach Barnett, national columnist, footballscoop.com. Man, I'm proud of you. I know I sound like a dad, but I remember you sitting next to me in the press box, and now here you are, national columnist for footballscoop.com. Excited that you're still in our business, and really appreciate the time with us today here on the Flagship podcast interview.
Thank you, Chip. It's a thrill to be here. I grew up reading you in the morning news way back when, and to think that we'd be sitting here having this conversation is unbelievable to me. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Let's do it again. We'll make it a regular check-in here on the Flagship podcast interview. And Happy New Year, Zach. And Happy New Year to all of our listeners. Thanks so much for listening in to the Flagship podcast interview with Zach Barnett. Make sure you get over to footballscoop.com to check out all of his work. Follow him on Twitter at Zach, ZACH_Barnett. For Zach, I am Chip Brown. I'll see you over at horns247.com. And until next time here on the Flagship podcast, stay safe and keep the faith.